Have you ever stopped to wonder what would happen if you treated money as if it were alive? Imagine it not as paper or numbers on a bank screen, but as a living presence that notices how you think, how you speak, and how you act toward it. That's the revolutionary idea that Florence Scovel Shinn brought to the world nearly a century ago. And yet, it still feels ahead of its time. She taught that money isn't an enemy or a mystery. It's energy that mirrors your inner state. The way you feel about yourself and your worth is the same way money will respond to you. It's not superstition, it's vibration, attitude, and language all working together. Florence lived in an era when women had little voice in financial matters. Most were expected to depend on others, to stay silent about their dreams of abundance. But she refused to accept that limitation. She saw how fear and guilt kept people, especially women, trapped in cycles of scarcity. And so, she began teaching something radical: that your relationship with money is a reflection of your relationship with life itself. If you treat it with resentment or shame, it will behave like a stranger. But if you speak to it with gratitude, respect, and love, it will come closer, stay longer, and multiply naturally. Picture someone sitting at their table after a long day, opening their wallet, and feeling disappointment. That moment, so common, so human, is where the shift begins. Florence would say, "Don't curse what you see, bless it. Don't say it's not enough, but rather thank you for being here. Because what you thank expands." She taught her students to create a friendship with money, not a chase. To talk to it. Yes, literally talk to it, as you would talk to a friend who wants to see you thrive. She'd remind them that you cannot insult a friend and expect them to visit often. Money works the same way. She used to tell stories that helped her students grasp this truth. One of them was about Helen, a piano teacher who lived in constant anxiety about her bills. Every time she looked at her account, she felt fear. When she heard Florence speak, she decided to try the impossible: gratitude. Every morning she would hold her small change in her hand and whisper, "You are a symbol of more to come. Thank you for being here." Within weeks, her classes began filling up. New students appeared, referrals came from unexpected places, and she no longer needed to worry about rent. Florence would smile and say, "That is the language of prosperity. Money responds when you bless it." The deeper meaning behind this was never about luck. It was about alignment. Florence believed that when your energy aligns with appreciation rather than fear, you unlock the natural flow of abundance. It's not about chasing money. It's about creating an inner environment where prosperity feels at home. She used to say, "Money goes where it feels invited and stays where it feels honored." This wasn't just philosophy, it was spiritual psychology long before that term existed. Her teachings bridged two worlds, the practical and the divine. She reminded people that abundance isn't greed. It's the natural reflection of divine order. Poverty of thought, she said, is what blocks the flow. You can pray for wealth all day, but if your words are filled with doubt, your energy contradicts your prayer. That's why her students practiced speaking blessings over every coin, every payment, every act of giving. The more they blessed money, the more they felt peace. And that peace, according to Florence, was the magnetic force that drew opportunities, resources, and help into their lives. She described money as a language, a way through which the universe communicates love, creativity, and support. When someone changes the way they talk to money, they begin to hear life itself speaking differently. Gratitude replaces fear, and the doors that once seemed locked start to open. For Florence, this wasn't imagination. It was law. The universe, she said, is orderly. When you vibrate at harmony, harmony responds. The beauty of her message is that it gives people back their power. You don't need to wait for external rescue. You begin with your words, your thoughts, and your emotions. Florence would remind her students, every phrase you repeat is a command to your world. That means when you say, "I can't afford it," you're writing a law into your own experience. But when you declare, "I am open to abundance, I welcome divine provision," you shift your energy and invite a different result. Florence wasn't a preacher of greed. She was a guide of dignity. To her, Prosperity wasn't about hoarding, but about allowing the natural generosity of life to flow through you. She wanted people to see that money isn't dirty or sinful. It's neutral. It simply amplifies who you are. If your heart is kind, money becomes a tool of kindness. If your heart is fearful, money becomes another reminder of fear. That's why she called money a mirror. It reflects your vibration back to you. Her insights were so profound that even today, nearly a century later, modern thinkers and coaches repeat them in new language. But Florence Scovel Shinn said it first. What you speak, you create. What you bless, you multiply. What you curse, you push away. And though her words were born in a time of scarcity, they hold even more weight now, when people live surrounded by abundance yet feel constantly lacking. She encouraged everyone to try one simple experiment. For 30 days, talk to money with kindness. Thank it when it arrives, bless it when it leaves, and invite it back without desperation. Keep your tone gentle and joyful, as you would with someone you trust. Then watch. Most people, she said, will see subtle shifts, new opportunities, unexpected refunds, forgotten clients reappearing, or small blessings turning into larger ones. The practice was never about superstition. It was about reprogramming the subconscious mind, which takes every word as instruction. Florence taught that the subconscious is like fertile soil. Whatever seed you plant, be it fear or faith, it will grow. So if you've spent years planting, "I never have enough," you must now begin planting, "Money loves to stay with me." The soil doesn't judge. It simply produces what it's given. That's why she insisted that the practice of talking to money must be filled with emotion. Not dry words, but living, feeling gratitude that vibrates through your body. Her message transformed countless lives, and not only financially. People reported sleeping better, feeling lighter, more hopeful. The fear that used to dominate their relationship with money slowly turned into peace. They began to see that abundance isn't earned by struggle. It's received by alignment. Florence called this the divine design, the perfect plan where everyone is meant to live in ease, creativity, and joy. The moment you align your words with that truth, the universe responds as if saying, "Finally, you're speaking my language." Florence Scovel Shinn used to say that one of the greatest misunderstandings in human life is thinking that money and spirituality are enemies. She would remind her listeners that the same divine intelligence that made the sun rise and the rivers flow also created the laws of circulation, and money is part of that sacred circulation. It is the current through which energy moves in material form. To reject money is to reject one of life's most beautiful ways of expressing support and balance. She taught that abundance was not a privilege of a few, but a universal right waiting to be accepted by those who dare to feel worthy. Her voice challenged a world drowning in limitation. Imagine her in the 1920s, standing in front of a group of women who were told their role was to serve, not to prosper. She looked into their eyes and said, "Your words are your wand." That sentence alone became her signature message. What you declare with conviction becomes your reality, whether you believe in scarcity or in divine provision. Florence would explain that the universe doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your vibration. The tone of your voice when you speak about money tells the universe how to treat you. Whisper words of lack, and it echoes back emptiness. Speak words of gratitude and confidence, and it echoes back opportunities. Let's picture Clara, a young seamstress trying to survive in a small town during difficult times. Every evening, she'd count her earnings with frustration, telling herself it would never be enough. One day she came across Florence's ideas in a borrowed book. At first, she laughed. Talking to money? But curiosity won. She decided to try it her way. The next night, she held her coins and softly said, "Thank you for your loyalty. Thank you for growing." She did it again the next day, and the next. Within 2 weeks, new clients appeared. By the end of the month, she was hired by a local store to design special garments. Was it luck? No. It was alignment. Florence would smile and say, "Life mirrors your inner dialogue." The moment people start treating money with love, their energy changes. The weight of fear begins to lift. Bills stop feeling like punishment and start feeling like exchanges of gratitude. Florence taught her students to bless every bill before paying it. "Thank you for this service," they would say. "Go and return multiplied." It may sound poetic, but she believed poetry was a form of prayer. Words carry frequency, and every frequency carries creation. The more your words harmonize with abundance, the more the universe harmonizes with you. For Florence, this was not fantasy. She saw it happen over and over again. A woman who once feared every due date suddenly found herself calmer, solutions arriving naturally. A man who always complained about his job received a promotion right after shifting his words from complaint to appreciation. The practice was deceptively simple. Change your language, change your life. She also taught that your energy when spending money is just as important as when receiving it. Most people, she said, curse money when it leaves their hands. They say, "There it goes again," or "I'll never have enough." Florence compared this to slamming the door on a friend. How likely is that friend to return? Her advice was to see every payment as a blessing in motion. When money flows out, it creates space for new flow to come in. Gratitude keeps the channel clean. Over time, her students realized that the goal wasn't just financial comfort, it was emotional freedom. Fear of money is a prison invisible to most. It controls choices, relationships, and self-esteem. By transforming fear into trust, people found not only financial improvement but also joy. Florence often said, "The kingdom of heaven is within, and prosperity is one of its fruits." She connected spiritual wholeness with material harmony, making her message revolutionary for its time. One of her favorite metaphors was the river. Money, she said, is like a river. It must keep moving. If you dam it with fear or guilt, it stagnates. If you let it flow with appreciation, it nourishes everything around it. This simple image helped many of her followers overcome the mental block of holding on too tight. They learned that giving and receiving were two sides of the same divine rhythm. Her philosophy spread quietly at first, mostly through word of mouth and handwritten letters. But wherever it went, it lit a spark. People began forming small circles to practice her affirmations together. They shared testimonies of how unexpected income, healed relationships, and opportunities started appearing. They realized the real miracle was not in the money itself, it was in their newfound confidence and peace. Florence Scovel Shinn didn't just teach, she lived her message. Those who met her described her presence as radiant, calm, and full of humor. She had no fear of talking about money because she had no shame in desiring good things. To her, beauty, joy, and prosperity were natural expressions of divine love. She wanted everyone to experience that freedom. And now, if you're listening to this, take a moment to reflect. How do you talk about money in your daily life? What words have you been sending into the universe? Because Florence would tell you that those words are not neutral, they are seeds. If your sentences are full of never, can't, and not enough, your garden will always look barren. But if your language starts with I welcome, I bless, and I receive, the soil of your life begins to bloom. At this point, Florence would often pause her teachings and invite her audience to do something practical. So let's do it now. Think of one phrase of abundance you can repeat daily. Something like, "Money flows to me freely, and I use it with wisdom and joy." Feel how it shifts your energy instantly. That's the beginning of transformation, the moment your inner tone changes. And if this message resonates with you, take a second to support this work. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me how this teaching makes you feel. Have you ever spoken to money like it's your friend? Would you try it for a week? Your story might inspire someone else watching right now who still feels trapped in fear or scarcity. Every comment, every story, adds to this collective wave of abundance that Florence dreamed humanity would one day awaken to. Because at the end of the day, these aren't just nice words, they're keys. Each act of gratitude, each blessing you give, is like opening a new door. And beyond that door is the version of you that already lives in peace with prosperity, who no longer sees money as a problem but as a partner in purpose. That's the transformation Florence Scovel Shinn wanted for everyone. To walk through life knowing that divine abundance is your birthright, not your burden. Florence Scovel Shinn often said that people live surrounded by miracles but fail to see them because they are too busy worrying. She believed that anxiety about money is one of the strongest barriers to prosperity. Every time you say, "I'm broke, I can't afford that," or "money always runs away from me," you carve those words into your subconscious like invisible laws. The mind doesn't argue, it simply obeys. That's why Florence urged people to speak only what they wanted to experience, not what they feared. To her, words were creative commands, not mere sounds. She would often tell her students, "When you talk about lack, you invite lack to dinner." The same way, when you talk about abundance with gratitude, abundance feels welcome to visit. She compared this to hospitality. If you prepare a warm meal and a clean space, your guest feels at home. If you complain, criticize, or doubt, that guest will quietly excuse itself and leave. Money, she said, behaves just like that. It's polite, responsive, and sensitive to the energy of your words. One of Florence's most famous stories was about Julia, a florist who had been struggling for years. Julia always said she was unlucky with money, that business was slow, and that people just don't have money to spend on flowers. After hearing Florence speak, she decided to change her words completely. Every morning before opening her shop, she would say aloud, "My store overflows with beauty and blessing. Money loves to visit here." Within a short time, her shop began attracting weddings, events, and long-term clients. Her energy changed, her tone brightened, and customers felt it the moment they walked in. Julia's story became one of Florence's favorite examples. When you stop cursing your circumstances and start blessing them, they blossom. Florence believed this principle applied to everything: money, health, love, creativity. Life, she said, is a mirror, and your reflection cannot smile if you frown first. That's why her students learned to monitor their thoughts and language carefully. Complaints were replaced with blessings, fear with faith. And as they did, the atmosphere around them began to change. But Florence didn't stop at affirmations. She wanted people to feel the emotion behind the words. She'd say, "Cold words freeze, warm words flow." It wasn't enough to repeat phrases mechanically. You had to feel gratitude in your chest, a genuine appreciation for what already exists. Even if you only had a few coins, she told them, hold them as if they were golden keys to your future. The feeling, she explained, is what creates the magnetic current that draws more of what you love into your life. She used to share an example of a man named Harold, a teacher who always struggled with late payments. After applying her advice, he began writing, "Thank you, universe, for the perfect circulation of abundance in my life," at the bottom of every check he sent. Within months, he was offered a new position that doubled his income. More importantly, he said he felt calm for the first time in years. He realized that his peace, not his pay, was the real source of wealth. Florence loved this story because it proved that abundance begins as a state of mind. She insisted that no external change could happen without an internal one. You could work harder, network more, or chase opportunities endlessly. But if deep down you believed that money was hard to get or that you didn't deserve it, your vibration would block it. The shift had to start in the soul. Florence's method wasn't about manipulation. It was about purification, cleaning the inner space so that divine supply could move freely again. And she often warned her students about guilt. Many people, she said, repel abundance because they secretly feel unworthy. They grew up hearing phrases like, "Money is evil," or "Rich people are greedy." So even when they pray for more, they sabotage themselves subconsciously. Florence's antidote was clear: redefine money as a channel of good. She told them, when money serves love, it becomes sacred. Every coin, every bill, every transaction can be an act of divine exchange if done with right intention. That idea transformed how her followers saw the world. They no longer viewed prosperity as selfish, but as participation in the natural generosity of the universe. Florence would also teach a powerful mental exercise. She asked her listeners to imagine money as light, not metal or paper, but pure golden light that flows toward them and through them. See it, she'd say, coming like sunlight through your window, warming everything it touches. This simple visualization opened hearts that had been clenched by fear for decades. Some even wrote letters later saying that after doing this for days, they received surprise payments, gifts, or opportunities. Florence would smile and remind them, when you shine from within, everything outside starts shining back. She was practical too. She told people not to hoard in panic, but to circulate with joy. Saving, she said, is wise when it comes from peace, but destructive when it comes from fear. Hold money as you hold a bird, she said, gently enough to let it breathe, firmly enough not to lose it. That balance, between appreciation and detachment, was the key to staying aligned with abundance. By the middle of her teaching years, Florence had become known for her calm authority. She didn't shout, she didn't promise quick riches, she radiated certainty. She embodied what she taught, serene confidence that the universe was always providing. And that calm was contagious. Students said just listening to her voice made them believe again in possibility. If she were alive today, Florence would probably say that modern people are drowning in noise. They check their bank apps every hour, compare their lives online, and feed fear without realizing it. She'd remind us that silence is a form of wealth too. Quiet your mind, she'd say, and abundance will find its way home. Her philosophy isn't about denial, it's about dominion, taking command of your thoughts so they serve, not sabotage, your divine design. And maybe that's why her teachings are resurfacing now, 100 years later. Because deep down, people are tired of fighting with life. They want peace, not just paychecks. They want to feel that the universe is friendly, not hostile. Florence Scovel Shinn gave them that hope, the promise that money, when treated as a friend, becomes a bridge to spiritual freedom. Before we move forward, take a second to breathe. Think about how you can apply this today. Maybe it's blessing your income, thanking the money you spend, or simply changing one phrase in your vocabulary. If this message speaks to you, leave your reflection below. Write something kind to money itself, something like, "Thank you for all the ways you support my life." It may seem small, but in the language of Florence, that's where the magic begins. Florence Scovel Shinn believed that prosperity was not a destination, but a state of harmony with divine law. She taught that when your thoughts, emotions, and actions flow in agreement with gratitude, abundance follows naturally. She would say, "Money is simply divine substance in circulation." That phrase startled many of her students because it erased the illusion that money was something separate from spirit. To Florence, the spiritual and material were two sides of the same truth, both expressions of one infinite source. She encouraged people to build an emotional friendship with this source. Instead of seeing money as a problem to solve, she wanted them to see it as a messenger, bringing lessons, opportunities, and reflections of self-worth. Florence once told a group of listeners, "The moment you stop fearing money, it stops fleeing from you." Fear, she explained, creates resistance, while gratitude creates attraction. That was why her method always began with words of blessing. Blessing is not flattery. It is recognition of divine order already working behind the scenes. She often used a simple but powerful metaphor. Imagine your home as a temple. Every time you pay a bill, it's like lighting a candle in that temple. When you spend money with resentment, you extinguish the flame. When you spend it with thanks, you make the whole house glow brighter. This image resonated deeply with her audience because it turned something ordinary, like handling finances, into a sacred act. Florence's message made everyday life feel like a conversation with the divine. She also emphasized that generosity was one of the fastest ways to align with abundance. Not reckless giving out of guilt or obligation, but joyful giving that affirms trust in the flow. "You cannot outgive God," she used to say, meaning that every act of sincere giving multiplies itself in unseen ways. Her students learned to release money with joy, whispering small blessings like, "Go, bless everyone you touch, and return multiplied." Over time, they noticed that life always replaced what they gave, often with more than before. The act of letting go became an act of faith, proof that they trusted life's rhythm. But Florence also taught discernment. She warned against giving from fear of rejection or from a desire to appear spiritual. The vibration behind the act mattered more than the act itself. If your heart is tense, she said, your hand cannot be generous. True generosity is relaxed, free, and confident that the universe provides endlessly. That subtle distinction between giving from fullness and giving from emptiness helped many of her followers find balance between self-respect and selflessness. In one of her public talks, Florence told the story of a widow named Evelyn who lived with 3 children and constant anxiety about money. Evelyn used to say, "I'm cursed with bills." After hearing Florence speak, she decided to shift her language entirely. She started calling her bills blessings in disguise. Each time one arrived, she'd place it on her table, touch it gently, and say, "Thank you for the service this represents. I bless the money that will pay this and see it returning multiplied." Within weeks, unexpected payments came from old clients of her late husband, and new work appeared. But what struck Evelyn most was the peace she felt. "For the first time," she said, "I sleep without fear." Florence smiled and told her audience, "That peace is the real prosperity." Her ideas extended beyond personal finance. She wanted to change how humanity related to abundance altogether. She often said that the collective fear of money was a symptom of separation from divine order. When society began to see money as evil, it began to disconnect from gratitude. And where there is no gratitude, there is no growth. Her mission was to remind people that prosperity is not privilege. It's participation in the natural rhythm of giving and receiving. Florence believed that people could rewrite the energy of their lineage. Many of her students carried generational stories of lack. Parents who struggled, grandparents who feared spending, families who equated modesty with poverty. She would tell them, "When you bless your money, you are healing your ancestors." Every word of gratitude breaks one link of the chain of scarcity. That insight gave new meaning to spiritual inheritance. Prosperity became an act of redemption, a way of freeing not only yourself but all who came before you. She also encouraged her students to celebrate small signs of abundance. A free meal, a found coin, a sudden discount, all were signals that the flow was active. She said, "If you ignore small blessings, you close the door to larger ones." Gratitude amplifies. Complaint diminishes. This teaching has echoed through generations because it feels simple yet profound. Even today, science confirms what Florence intuitively knew. Gratitude changes brain chemistry, shifting perception from threat to safety, from scarcity to sufficiency. Florence's words continue to reach new audiences, especially those seeking peace in an age of financial noise. She might look at modern society, with its constant ads, debts, and pressure, and say, "The noise has grown, but the law remains the same. If you fear money, it will mirror your fear. If you love it, it will serve you faithfully." The practice of speaking with kindness to money is timeless because it goes beyond currency. It's about vibration, worthiness, and faith in divine timing. And here's something to think about. If you were to meet your money as a person today, what kind of relationship would you have? Would you greet it warmly or avoid its gaze? Would you thank it for staying or scold it for leaving? Florence wanted everyone to ask themselves that question honestly, because the answer reveals not how much money you have, but how much love you're allowing. If this message is moving something in your heart, pause for a moment. Reflect on how you can turn your daily interactions with money into moments of blessing. Share your reflection in the comments. Tell me what phrase you'll start saying from today on. Maybe you'll say, "Money flows to me in perfect peace," or "I am grateful for the abundance that surrounds me." Your words might help someone else find hope. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel to stay connected to teachings like these. Teachings that blend the practical with the spiritual, just like Florence Scovel Shinn did. Because in truth, this is not just about attracting wealth. It's about remembering who you are. You are not a beggar before life. You are a co-creator with it. The moment you honor the divine flow within you, every area of your life begins to rise to meet that vibration. Florence would call this living in tune with the infinite. And when you reach that state, money no longer rules you. It becomes a faithful companion on your path to purpose. Florence Scovel Shinn often ended her lectures by returning to the simplest truth of all. The way you treat money is the way you treat yourself. Every thought of scarcity, every complaint about not having enough, every moment of guilt for wanting more, each one is a small wound in your self-worth. She said that money, like life, listens. It listens to your tone, your belief, your confidence, and most of all, your love. That's why her teachings were not truly about getting rich. They were about healing. Healing the fear that says, I can't. Healing the shame that says, I don't deserve. Healing the resentment that says, I'll never have. She knew that when those emotional knots loosen, abundance finds its way home naturally. Florence's message was so revolutionary because it made people see money not as an object of control but as a relationship, one that could be renewed and elevated through kindness. She would say, you don't dominate money, you dance with it. The dance becomes graceful when you stop leading with fear and start moving with faith. In that rhythm, giving and receiving are no longer opposites. They become one continuous motion. She once told a story of a writer named Diane, who struggled for years to sell her work. Diane was talented but constantly spoke words of frustration. Nobody values my writing, she'd say. After reading Florence's book The Game of Life and How to Play It, she began changing her inner dialogue. She would wake up and declare, my words bless the world, and the world blesses me in return. Within 3 months, one of her manuscripts was accepted, followed by 2 new commissions. When she received her first payment, she held the check in her hands and whispered, thank you for recognizing my value. Florence said that gratitude was not a reaction to success. It was the cause of it. That's what made her philosophy timeless. It wasn't wishful thinking, but a spiritual law. She saw the universe as a perfectly balanced system responding to the vibration of human consciousness. When you bless what you have, you multiply its pattern. When you curse it, you shrink its presence. That's why she insisted that your words must be chosen with care. She'd say, every sentence is a seed, and the harvest always matches the planting. Florence believed that the ultimate goal was freedom, not the kind bought by wealth alone, but the inner peace of knowing that you are always provided for. She used to tell her students to release the heavy armor of worry. Faith and fear cannot live in the same house, she'd say. Whichever you feed, grows stronger. Her idea of faith wasn't passive. It was active, creative, and joyful. It meant walking through life with an unshakable knowing that the universe is friendly, that divine order is real, and that abundance is the language of love made visible. She would often challenge her audiences with this question: how do you expect money to love you if you keep rejecting it? And then she'd pause, letting silence do its work. That silence was where transformation began. People started realizing how much of their financial struggle was really emotional, rooted in fear of being judged, fear of repeating family patterns, fear of being too much. Florence's compassion helped them forgive themselves. You were taught to fear lack, she'd say, but now it's time to learn to trust plenty. What she offered was more than advice. It was initiation. She invited ordinary people to become conscious creators, to speak to life itself as if it were listening. Because it is. She saw words as spiritual technology, capable of rearranging energy. When you affirm love toward money, she explained, you're not talking to metal, you're talking to substance, to God's idea of supply. To her, even a coin carried divine intelligence. She would ask her students to look at money with reverence, not obsession, to see it as a vessel carrying their intentions into the material world. This perspective birthed countless success stories. Some were simple: a woman finding rent just in time, a man receiving payment after months of delay, but others were profound transformations. People wrote to Florence saying that after applying her teachings, not only did their finances improve, but their relationships, health, and confidence also flourished. Because once you heal your sense of lack, you begin to live as someone whole. You no longer chase things. You attract them through peace. That was Florence's true genius. She wove prosperity and spirituality into one fabric. She saw abundance not as privilege but as divine order. She reminded people that when they allow themselves to prosper, they give others permission to do the same. Your success, she'd say, is a sermon. Every person who shifts from fear to gratitude becomes a light for someone still lost in worry. She envisioned a world where communities uplifted each other by sharing stories of abundance instead of stories of struggle. If you imagine Florence speaking today, her words would still pierce through the noise of doubt. Stop chasing money and start embodying abundance. Money follows clarity, peace, and gratitude. It doesn't create them. She would remind us that prosperity begins in how we wake up, how we speak about our bills, how we bless the flow of life each day. She'd probably look at the endless rush of the modern world and say, "You already have what you're searching for. It's just waiting for your permission to appear." Now pause for a moment. Feel the energy in these words. Think about how you've treated money lately. Have you spoken to it with love or with worry? Have you thanked it for staying or feared it for leaving? Remember, Florence said the relationship you have with money mirrors the relationship you have with yourself. If you can forgive yourself for past mistakes, if you can celebrate even the smallest gain, you've already stepped into a higher vibration. And before we close, I want to invite you to do something Florence would have loved. Take a deep breath, place your hand over your heart, and say softly, "I am in harmony with the flow of divine abundance. Money is my friend. It comes to me in peace and multiplies through joy." Feel it, not as a wish, but as truth already forming in your reality. Because it is. If this message touched you, share your story with us below. Tell us what changed in your perspective, what memories or beliefs you're releasing today. Your experience might be the encouragement someone else needs. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected to teachings inspired by Florence Scovel Shinn, timeless wisdom that blends spirit and practicality, helping us remember that abundance is not something we chase but something we allow. Let's continue spreading this awareness together. Every like, comment, and story shared adds light to this collective transformation. A community of people rediscovering peace with money, dignity with life, and faith in divine flow. As Florence once said, "When you bless the invisible, the visible must obey." So bless what you cannot yet see, speak as if it's already here, and watch how life responds, faithfully, beautifully, and in perfect divine timing.